Interesting. You guys look like you've been hypnotized. You really do. It's like, oh, boy. I didn't know all that was in there, man. Just a brief logistical thing about this presentation tonight. There's going to be a door prize also, right? But the entrance to the door prize is a receipt from the bookstore. In other words, if you buy a book or an audio tape or whatever from the catalog at the bookstore that will be there at noon, and also I think after 5, between 5 and 7, that receipt will go into a hat. And at the end of the presentation that I'm giving tonight, somehow we'll randomly draw one of those receipts. And if that is your receipt, then you will have a $150 fully transferable gift certificate to anything that I do in the next, say, year. That includes Bali, Peru, Hawaii, or this one-day Sunday thing that's coming up this Sunday. It's a one-day exploration of shamanism. You could apply it to that, bring a friend. So that's kind of hopefully a little bit of a motivator to buy your books tonight, all those books you were planning on buying
What about
this
the book
summer.
last week?
If you, well, boy. Gotta watch you guys in these language patterns, right? Interestingly, I bought a book last week and I still have the receipt. Well, I suppose if you have a receipt, you have to have a receipt. Well, that's the ticket. So, let's do this. We look a little, you know, one of the things that we tend to do as humans is we tend to settle into patterns, which is what we're doing right now. You've got the trainer up front, right? Practitioners in their chairs, all attentive, 9 o'clock in the morning, ready to learn. And there's certain structures, certain anchors that go on in that, right? You have certain expectations. So let's break up the pattern by everyone standing up and making a big circle around our chairs. And actually, we don't need this on camera. You could go ahead and cut that. Then, let's see. We've been here before, right? Just moments ago, we were sitting in our seats. So I want to begin with kind of a semi-open frame, right? If you have commentary or experiences that have occurred during the almost first 2 weeks of the practitioner, that's fine, or anything that's relevant to what you've covered so far in the practitioner. My first 3 days, primarily sensory acuity, rapport, anchoring, and then Jan Prince was here with the meta model, and Charles with the hypnotic language patterns of Milton Erickson, the last couple of days. And here I am again, and as Chris was saying, we have some specific exercises, some techniques we're going to explore. In the next 3 days, criticism, strategy, and strategies themselves, right? And we're also going to do some sort of big integration pieces, putting together everything that we've covered so far, all the anchoring, all the rapport, and then some fine points about sensory acuity. So that's where we're going, but given that is where we're at, where we're going, I want to open it up to any commentary, observations, accusations from the group, just to make sure that there's nothing rolling around inside that needs to be expressed. Yes?
You said that we were, when we all were here, you said, oh, looks like you guys are in a trance. And as we're doing that, you said, take a deep breath in and exhale your mind. Isn't that hypnotic?
I don't know. What do you think? Was it for you?
Well, it made me more...
John and Richard used to have this great discussion, sort of a banter back and forth when they were teaching together in the good old days. And one of them, I suspect that it was probably Richard, but I'm not sure, was fond of saying there is no such thing as hypnosis. And the other one, I think it was John, but I'm not sure, was fond of saying that everything is hypnosis. You're always in an altered state. Right? In a sense, this dichotomy between conscious and unconscious is an artificial dichotomy. Right? As hopefully you kind of explored with Charles, it's like a rainbow. You know, it's one thing, but there are bands of color in it. Same with awareness and consciousness. We go in and out of trance all the time. Altered states. An altered state is what? What is an altered state?
A state that's from one state to another.
Yeah.
You're happy to neutral.
Right.
Neutral is an altered
Right. That's an altered state. You know. Say again?
That's like being hypnotized.
Hypnotized? Well, I mean, there are some sort of hallmarks. We see hypnosis or hypnotic trance state. Those are words, right? And words are simply representations of experience. So you have to kind of explore the words and unpack them. It's like a little suitcase, and you open it up, and there's all kinds of things in there, much more than you thought could fit in the suitcase. That's what words are about experience. And you can discuss hypnotic trance states, interesting, with words never having had a profound trance state. Just like you can discuss skydiving, jumping out of an airplane with a parachute, even though you've never done it. Because words are a secondary representation of experience. But if you've had the experience, right? No?
I don't know.
You don't know if you've ever been in a trance?
Well, I know I can distinguish between different states, but maybe it's the idea that I had from being hypnotized is different from...
Yeah. So this might be not the experience itself, but the ideas you have about it, right? I mean, some people think that unless they're walking around the room clucking like a chicken, they're not hypnotized, right? Because they have that understanding of hypnosis. One way to think about hypnotic trance states is they're states of absorption, right? Where you're just kind of totally absorbed by the moment or the experience that's occurring. I would say that probably everyone in this room has had that experience with a really good book. You ever get into a book, you know? Maybe it's taking place in a different historical epic in another country, and you're 4 or 5 pages into it, and you can almost smell the dust from the horse's hooves, or right, whatever it is. That's a hypnotic trance state. Or one of those times, maybe driving a car, right? You're on a cross-country cruise, you've been driving for an hour or so, and you just, it's not that you're driving unsafely, you're aware of what's happening, so the conscious mind is very much there, but you're just somewhere else. You kind of, whoa. What happened to the last 20 miles? So we go in and out of these all the time, right? I mean, it can happen in really mundane environments. You're watching television, and there's nothing on, and you're just, but boom, you click, and suddenly it's the wild kingdom, and they're showing little baby otters. And you go, oh, and for an instant, you just, boom. So the thing to kind of understand about hypnotic trance states is that they're natural. We do them all the time. And yet, hopefully with your experience of Charles, you understand that there's kind of a structure for the amplification and the entry into these states, and then strategies for making these states useful, right? So that they're not just random and happening to you, that you have a degree of control over those. Other commentary or questions? Specifically about... Did you get tired of the word specifically, or was Jan light on the word, I hope? How specifically do you... Wow. No questions is either good news or bad news. I'm not sure.
Excellent.
Excellent news. Why, they have fully assimilated the material and know precisely where they are. Hey, yay.
Just one question. When you are in the second position, in the perceptual positions, is it possible that you are disassociated with the feeling?
Is it possible that you are disassociated from...
in a second position, you're looking at yourself from second position, right?
If I look, that means that I'd be looking at myself through your eyes.
Right.
Uh-huh.
Right. No, I'm looking at myself through my eyes from second position.
Second position is the position of the other. I think you're describing third position, which is observer position.
That's observer position.
Yeah, okay.
I'm talking specifically about the second position.
All right. And the question I'm still not clear about.
Yeah. Is it possible that you're in second position and not be associated with the first person's feelings?
Okay, so let me sort of slow this down. Second position is, if I were to go to second position, I would become you.
Okay.
All right? And if I were able to do it really effectively, right, really congruently, I would have a sense of your internal state, right? And I might have an observation about the Tom over here and what he's doing, if I were you, right? Now, this is an interesting thing about second position particularly. As I was saying when we first explored first, second, and third positions, second position is, for most of us, it's the most difficult to congruently shift to, right? Because what it kind of implies is that somewhere within you, you have the capacity to represent the kind of emotional states that I may be going through. And this is not always the case. You remember, I think I was telling you about that young boy I worked with from Kuwait that had no experience dating. So he didn't really have the resident, internal states to go to second position yet with his models. He had to model them for a while and kind of practice that. The better you know someone, your husbands, your wives, your daughters, your sons, your coworkers, about their history. You've picked up a lot of information about just physiology, how they behave and, what their emotional moods are as they go through the day. The more information you have about someone, the easier it is to go to second position. Right? And in fact, that's one of the kind of hallmarks of a close relationship. You feel empathetic. Right? And it's just this, you can kind of begin to really understand what the other person is going through. Right? So it's third position, the observer, is generally, once you kind of understand what it is, it's pretty easy for most of us to practice. Second position takes a little work, right? But it's well worth doing. I mean, we discovered a lot when we just did the walking in moccasins thing, right? And what you'll discover, you're already discovering it with all the skills that you're developing, that when you can really elicit another's map of reality. And the meta model is a great way to do this linguistically. Hopefully if you think back to those language patterns, what it helps you do is structure a really detailed representation of particularly the spoken words of another, but therefore the experiences that they're pointing to, so that then you can kind of slip into this map. In other words, the meta model is really neat because it requires you to challenge your own map of the world. Someone says, I have this great sense of freedom, right? And you go, freedom now, that there is one of those nominalizations. I got to do something with that, who's being free about what, and what's that involve? Rather than simply assuming it's the same kind of freedom that you experience, right? To find out what it is. And the meta model is a way to begin to elicit this structure. One of the things that is useful for is to enable you to go more completely to second position. Second position is nothing more than entering into another's map of the world, right? And the meta model is a great doorway. So you have a couple doorways. You have straight ahead physiology. We practiced that with the rapport things where you'd match body posture and voice tone and have that sense of rapport. And now we have a linguistic structure, right? The meta model is a way of gathering high quality information. The Milton model, interestingly enough, on the other hand, is a way to begin to relax and implement and facilitate change. Right? So you've got it kind of information coming in, structuring a map of the world, certain techniques once you gather the information or an outcome, and linguistic structures to make that change easy.
I easily got into second position and stayed there for a long, long time. I have a hard time getting out of it.
Yeah, and some people do, right? Again, there are a lot of folks in here that are people helpers, that do counseling or therapy or work, nurses, educators. And sometimes, just because they have that facility, they tend to spontaneously go to second position. And I was talking about that earlier. At the end of the day, sometimes you feel exhausted, right? It's like, wow, I feel like I've been carrying around somebody else's load here. And often that is because of a spontaneous second position shift, right? And you begin to pick up not only, remember when you were walking in moccasins and suddenly your world began to shift? You felt different things in your body. Maybe you're seeing the world differently. If you do this spontaneously, amazing things can happen. Your physiology shifts and your emotional state can shift along with it, unless you know what's going on. But once you detect the pattern that that's what's happening, then you can use what you know to choose to do it or not, right? So, you're aware that, wow, I'm really getting into this. I really have a sense of feeling from what's going on with you. Now it's time to kind of pop out and look at it from a distance and see where we go next. Right? The first step to changing any pattern that you detect in yourself is perception of the pattern. You got to identify it. You got to know what it is before you can change it. So that's great that you observe that you periodically jump into second position. Right? Yes.
With what I understand so far, with the meta model,
Yes.
it seems to me that you're gathering a lot of information. And the way that the Milton model was presented, we're trying to break it down into real small chunks. But it also seemed to me that if it was presented only as that Erickson wouldn't have been gathering information to begin with. It just seemed like the person comes in, you sit down, you say all these things, and miraculous things happen.
Right.
So it seems to me, I don't know, I don't think that was the whole picture in terms of...
Right. I agree. I think I understand your question, or your observation. That you have basically two relatively intense days of Milton model, quote, language patterns, and practice utilizing those and an exploration of the states that they may elicit when you do it. Right? Now, keep in mind, this is truly the tip of an iceberg with a huge amount of background experience and reality out of awareness. Milton, over time, we're talking about an entire lifetime of pursuit. And then John and Richard modeling his language patterns, right? And then this being synthesized into a sort of an abbreviated structural form and presented in a 2-day period. So I think really for me, the best way for you guys to understand hypnotic language patterns and what they are, given the 2-day experience here, is that 2-day experience is like a doorway. You understood, okay, the hinges are over here, and this is the knob. I got it. It opens like this. And Milton went through that door his entire life, 50, 60 years into this realm. Understanding experience, information gathering. I told you stories, and I'm sure Charles did too, about Milton's incredible sensory acuity. Right? And that's all information gathering. Right?
So, like, if you're listening to someone's story and getting information meta model way.
Right.
I guess I'm not sure of how to put both of those together in terms of if someone came to see you about something.
Right.
Sit down, put them in the trance, and tell them, all these vague words and baba bing.
So and there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. NLP. Sit down on a chair. We'll go baba bing. That's the way it works. You say you're unsure of what specifically?
Well, how they work together. The meta model and the Milton model.
How they work together.
Yeah.
Okay. What is your understanding of how they work together?
That if someone came to see you, maybe initially you'd be eliciting information meta model way, and then
to find out precisely where they're coming from.
To go or what,
right. So when you, the sense you have of the way they work together is that there's a sort of a structure that the first thing you do is the meta model. Is that right?
I would think so, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And then how would you know when to stop with the meta model?
When they're annoyed.
Well, you stop it when they tell me.
I'm not sure, I guess.
I'm just about to...
Okay. Right. Well, yeah, that would be an important thing to understand, right? Because it's like you have a strategy. You're just describing a strategy that you gather information with the meta model, and then you use the Milton model to begin to move the person towards where they want to be. But if you don't know where to end the meta model, right? So what do you think? What would be useful guidelines for beginning to move from information gathering to Milton model and change work? What would be useful for you? How would you know?
See, I'm not sure, but I think that I made a point yesterday that, if you got someone to do the circle of excellence or got someone to do the new behavior generator, I don't see a lot of difference that and deep trance in some ways. If someone's really visualizing this circle and all these things going on and hearing things and feeling things, that's pretty deep trance too.
Right, right. But how do you know which to choose? Circle of excellence, new behavior generator. How do you know what they want? Calibrate. All right. So you calibrate. What are you calibrating to?
Well, we started doing that yesterday when in the exercises we'd be given a nominalization, to start the thing.
Right.
So we'd ask, well, what other words are associated with that?
Mm-hmm.
And when you had enough words, because you were calibrating, that they were giving you enough words, then we began the exercise.
Okay. So you could kind of use their words as a doorway to elicit whatever state it was. Right. And in a sense, that was kind of meta model, right? They got a big nominalization, relaxation. What's that like for you is a meta model question. So you're gathering that until your calibration indicates that, oh, okay. Putting together these small chunks, I'm gathering the components of this state, altered state called relaxation. And then there's it's a judgment call. It's a judgment call when you have enough information to begin to use the information you've got to elicit the state or make the change that you want. Right?
So for example, in one session with somebody, you could potentially be doing meta-model stuff,
Right.
some circle of excellence or some other exercises that you've learned, and some maybe Milton-style stuff at the end of the session.
Exactly right. I think a cooking metaphor is appropriate. You know, I mean, a good chef has got all kinds of condiments. They might have a basic. They're going to do chicken and vegetables, right? A couple of things, put them together. But boy, the artistry comes in. How much salt? And very seldom it's like, okay, that's it in the salt. Right? It's, a little bit more salt. I'm trying this. And it's the same with these. I mean, simply for the assimilation of the material and the presentation of it, in a sense, it's arbitrary the way we've chunked it out. Okay, calibration, rapport, anchoring, meta model, Milton model, right? They seem to be like salt, pepper, and yet you mix them and match them. So, you're working with someone, what you'll find is, you're doing a little state access and relaxation. When they first come in the room, you don't even know them. First day you've seen the client. Wow, have a seat in your chair and just let yourself relax for a moment. Take a couple of deep breaths, a little bit of state access. Now then, we were talking on the phone about, the way that you'd like to experience your relationship. And I need to find out more about how you perceive relationships, meta model, and right? So you're weaving in and out, and it's not like, okay, boom, boom, establish rapport, got my rapport, now meta model, got that, okay, now trance work, technique, you're done, right? It's a holistic interaction, and that's the point of this 3 days. Part of this is an integration of everything so far. There'll be another one towards the end of the training when Charles comes back, and it'll be an integration of the entire training. And that integration is designed to kind of blend all of these experiences, techniques, approaches that you've been exploring. So it becomes a holographic kind of thing. A good image is a crystal. You've seen a beautiful quartz crystal, right? And the crystal has facets. And they have a specific shape, and you can look at that. Just that one surface, like the meta model. And you look at this other one, whoa, it's the Milton model. But if you take that crystal and spin it, it's the whole thing. Yeah.
Just to give a little bit of an example of how the both models can work together and then have a little closer to what I went through yesterday. All of that was very much Milton model, and when I was done with my trance, I still didn't know exactly what that meant for me. And as everyone here knows, it was very powerful. And so when I went home, I told my wife about it, and she just wanted to know more about it. So she started asking me specific questions. And as she did that, because I couldn't draw any specific meaning yet from what I had gone through, and the more questions she asked, the deeper I went into what I had actually experienced, and then boom, it was there. And I went through a really emotional experience last night at home. And the whole thing was very powerful, and I feel really grateful that I went through it. And so, just to let everybody know, I'm okay.
Can I see your wife?
Yeah, we want to talk to your wife to make sure. Excellent. Great. And it's interesting. I mean, it's just words. Wow. And this kind of event, or the kinds of changes that are possible with them. Neuro-linguistic programming. Right? Yeah.
If I may answer Blair's question.
Sure.
Normally what happens is that when the client comes to you, he might add or delete information which is irrelevant to the specific outcome he's looking out for. That's the time you use those meta model to calibrate how exactly you can go to this outcome.
All right, another way to think about it, this little graphic here of this guy. Right? There's a reality out here, whatever that may be. This nervous system, this human being, uses the 5 senses, right? And internally generates a map, right? There are 3 characteristics of every map ever made, right? Those characteristics are deletion, distortion, and generalization. Every map is, to some degree, deletes information, distorts, or generalizes information, including this one, right? And people tend to develop habits, so they delete in specific ways. They distort in specific ways, and they generalize in specific ways. So what happens if this map becomes impoverished, right? Impoverished means poor. It means that you don't have access to everything you need. It's like, impoverished, it's just like, wow, problems. And the dance between the meta model and the Milton model begins to transform this map. The metaphor I used, do you remember, 1928. It was a good map in 1928, but for 2004, that's an impoverished map. Right? Territory has changed. So the meta model begins to allow the person to explore other aspects of their map that they're unaware of. It's in there, but their consciousness tends to bind itself to specific patterns. So as this map amplifies, then things like resources, outcomes, etc., become more obvious to the person. And then the Milton model is a linguistic strategy to make it easy to restructure that map in a way that kind of updates it. Right? It's another way to think about it. Interesting conversation. I should think back to the first couple of days. The kinds of questions that you're asking and observations that you're having right now were totally impossible for you. You were unconsciously incompetent, right? And in that short period of time, you're at a level of conscious competence in this material. We are asking really intelligent questions about what you've experienced and how it fits together and what it means, etc. The next step, of course, is this assimilation to the level of unconscious competence. Okay, I think we're ready to jump into something a little bit familiar on the one hand and a little bit more complex and difficult on the other. We're going to begin where I began the first morning, with sensory acuity. All right? Who hasn't been up here yet? I'd like 4 people who haven't been up here yet to just come up. This is a fun little exercise. All right? Sure, you can ask me a question, Michelle.
There are 3 items that kind of create that map in the head that may not match reality.
Right.
What are those 3 items again?
They're the universal properties of all maps: generalization, deletion, and distortion. Okay, one more person. Come on, ladies and gentlemen. 1, 2, 3. I said 4 people. Come on, come on. There's somebody else that hasn't been up here. Come on, come on. Ah, hey, Adrian, there we are. All right, let's see. Who would I like to be the pattern?
1 against the 3.
Huh?
1 against the 3.
1 against the 3. So it's going to be you. All right. So Israel, it looks like it's sorted out like this. There's 3 over here, 1 over here, so let's use this pattern. All right, Israel, what I'd like you to do is establish a context in which you might characteristically find yourself. This could be like a teaching class, so it could be like a school situation. It might be family therapy. It might be a business context. What kind of context do you often find yourself in?
Okay.
Okay, name the context.
I like the context of the congregation, usually a Sunday congregation.
Okay. So you're going to be part of the congregation, right? Let's say that they're in the congregation and they've come to you to talk to you about some issue that maybe they have going on. What might that be? Maybe it's a family or something, all right? And they're having trouble in the family of some sort.
Yeah.
All right? All right, so this is going to be the context, and the pattern detector, Israel's position here, they set the context, right? Kind of set the role play. All right? And then, here's what's going to happen. In a moment, I'm going to ask you to step outside the door.
Okay.
And these guys are going to be doing something. What they're going to be doing is they're going to be establishing a pattern of behavior, right? Because this is what happens in systems, right? And you've noticed this in your own family. When Dad raises his voice in that certain way, somebody goes, oh, and then Mom goes, oh, now, Bill, it's okay. It's just like bing, 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 right? One thing fires off another thing, fires off another thing, fires off another thing. And it's totally unconscious, right? I mean, it just happens because of these kind of anchored sequences in the family or in the system. It's really useful to be able to detect these. In other words, what's being transmitted as a signal or a signal system? What's going on here besides just the surface structure of the words? Right? How are these people firing off anchors that stimulate a response in the next one and the next one? And what's the little dance here at a nonverbal level? Right? So for you, Israel, this is going to be a challenge in kind of multiple awareness, because when you come back, you're going to have a normal conversation with this family about their family problem and whatever it is. So you guys are going to have to sort of think of how you set that up in words. But you're also going to be observing their nonverbals. And what you're going to be attempting to discover, right, is a systematic sequence, right, of anchored responses here. All right, so they have to rehearse that. So you need to step outside, let's say, for about 2 or 3 minutes. We'll come and get you in a minute. So you can't see or hear what they're up to, because it could be either visual or auditory for you. All right, you guys got the task. It's going to be whatever it is. You could be a mom and 2 kids or 3 sisters.
One family?
Or it could be whatever you like, right? So how do you want to set it up? Let's say 3 sisters. What could be a problem with 3 sisters?
Oh, a lot of problems.
All right, so you could just so 3 sisters squabbling, right? You guys, I'm sure you could pull that one off great. Now the content isn't so much. It's just kind of to keep the content rolling, because that's going to occupy his conscious mind. He's going to have to respond, right? He doesn't get to go into a trance. He has to stay there and communicate with you verbally. So just some kind of an argument that may occur between 3 sisters. That's the surface structure.
In the same room?
In the same room.
Yeah, like one
Cover each other's dresses and
steal each other.
Oh, they're good at this, man. All right, you got the surface structure.
So what's the deep structure?
All right, now the deep structure is as follows, and here's how you put this together.
Okay.
All right. What I would like you to create is a sequence in which we'll start with Maya, go to Masuda, and then it'll be passed to Adrian. So it'll go like, you'll do something or say something.
Something nonverbal.
Nonverbal. So it could be a facial expression, it could be a voice tone, it could be a word like, oh, really? Or it could be just a look, it could be a cough, just some little consistent trigger. It's like an anchor. And whenever you do that, it fires Masuda off.
But Masuda should know why.
You have to tell her what it is, and you have to rehearse the sequence a bit. So choose some trigger, something that you could do in the conversation that would act like an anchor, either a visual anchor or auditory. Just anything. Go ahead and choose something. Okay, there's the look. You see the look?
I don't like that look.
Okay. Spontaneous response.
Yes, and I stay in this.
Okay, so there's the look. Now you have to pick a consistent response. All right, now this was visual, so let's make a bit of a challenge. So rather than having a visual response, how about an auditory? So whenever she does that, how might you respond that would be like just a response, but an auditory?
Like screaming or?
Now,
Natural reaction.
here's the thing. It's like when he comes back in, you don't want to go, woo, ah, ee, right? Way too easy. You're going to start off, just remember the sensory acuity exercises. You're going to start off real subtle, so he probably won't even detect it.
You can say like, so what?
Okay, so she does that, and you might go,
So.
Practice that a bit. So. All right. And you might have what kind of response to, oh, that was good. Quick little eye roll. All right. So, okay, here we got the look, we got the so, we got the eye roll. So practice that a couple times. So here's the.
So.
All right. All right, now let's.
Look at me that way. Why not?
All right, now let's amp it up a little bit, because now here's his challenge. When he comes in, your instructions are to roll the argument with the sisters, content-wise. But fire off these triggers, these sort of anchored sequences, very subtly. Because what we're challenging here is his threshold of perception. Now, he's going to be doing two things. He's going to have to maintain the conscious connection, but he's going to be calibrating to the whole system. Right? Question.
To be clear, so they're going to have a conversation about something.
Yeah, they got a
time. They're going to throw these.
Absolutely. They've got a problem in the family, and they've come to Israel for help. That's the surface structure, right? But what he's doing is trying to figure out what's going on here in the system. You know, who's doing what to whom non-verbally. So, once again, you fire off yours.
So.
There it is. Great. Now do it. Amplify it a little bit more, even more intensity.
So.
Oh, great. Nice little okay. Great. All right, you got it? So when he comes back, I'm, targeting time-wise, maybe you want to stretch him for maybe, somewhere 5 minutes or so. I mean, you don't want to give it to him too early, too easy, right? So you want to cycle it through.
Just do the same thing?
The same thing. So you're having a conversation. Interspersed. So you're saying, well, I don't know, the sisters are all, my sister, she's always doing this, and, that one's always doing that. Yeah, absolutely, yeah. And she, she won't pick up her clothes. Then you give her the look, and she goes, so, and then you roll your eyes, and then you say something, and it goes back and forth. But you're always the one that fires it off, right? And you're always the one that follows. See, the thing is, they're going to be doing lots of other little things in sequence. But this is the one I want them to detect. So you're going to start off with low amplitude, right? Real subtle. And you're going to slowly, over the conversation as it goes on.
The problem that I have. Yeah, we should talk about the problem.
Sure.
We have.
You live in the same room, and right, somebody won't pick up their clothes. The other one comes in too late. The other one wants to read a book, whatever it is, right? And you come to him for help. That's the content. Right. So when you cycle this through, you want to give him a little reset time, a break state. In other words, don't keep just doing it, right? And every time you do it, make it a little bit more intense.
So you should do it over and over again.
Yeah, okay. But again, with a little bit of break state in between.
With other things.
Exactly. Okay. So you'll run the sequence, and if he doesn't get it, you'll just talk a little bit, and then you'll fire it off. You'll run through the sequence again. And as time progresses, you'll mark it out more and more cleanly, more and more, right, obviously, until he gets it, right? Now, when he comes in, his task is to find out who's the first one in the loop, right? And then steal their trigger. So as soon as he identifies it in Maya, and he's pretty sure that it's going like that when she goes, so, and this fires off Adrian, right? As soon as he determines that, then at some point what he's going to do is look at Masood and go. And if he does that, the same thing, then you fire off, and boom, he's got it. That's when he's successful.
First, right?
You should always start first.
Yeah, talking.
Yeah. Oh, no, it doesn't matter. That doesn't matter. Right? Because there's two levels, right? One is the content. That's just to keep his mind engaged, while his perceptual filters at another level is looking for this pattern. All right? All right, you got it? You want to practice a little bit? I'm going to go get him. Okay, now, Israel.
What I have to do is...
Come on in. Just you understand the kind of instructions here. These are three sisters.
Yeah.
These are three sisters, and they're having a problem, and they've come to you for some advice, right? So you're going to be talking to them about that. But at another level, you want to know what's the unconscious system here. You know, what kind of anchored sequences do they have going? So they have a little sequence that your instructions are to detect.
Okay.
In other words, one of them is going to do something that causes a response in the second one, and that causes a response in the third one. And your task is to, once you think you have the pattern, you're going to steal the first signal, right?
Okay.
And see if you can fire off the rest of the chain.
Okay.
You got it?
Okay.
All right. Let's roll it and see how it goes. All right, girls.
So we have this problem. We live together and just annoy each other. It's something terrible.
So,
It's okay for you to say, "Oh, you have a problem?" You know, it's like, you got to be naturalistic. You got to be relaxed. You got to talk to these girls.
So you have a problem, Adrian. And what's specific maybe the problem?
Well, I always like to borrow my clothes without asking.
She often wears the T-shirts that my boyfriend gave to me, and it's really upsetting me.
I like your T-shirt.
But he gave them to me, so...
Yeah, but you always come home late.
Yeah, because I have a boyfriend.
But you use bathroom for a long time.
Yeah, because I have a boyfriend.
What is it? So it's the problem of the T-shirt.
Of the T-shirt? No, not for me. For her, she's got some problem with the T-shirt thing.
It's not the T-shirt thing.
So it's a boyfriend.
No, she steals my pillows all the time.
I like the pillows.
It's a pillow.
Yeah, that's part of the problem, I guess.
She does it too?
Who?
You?
Me? What are you
Yeah?
talking about?
Yeah, you do it too.
I do. What? Oh, I do. I do. Why do you want to steal her pillows?
You steal my shoes too.
I don't even fit in your shoes.
Yes, you do.
I don't.
You break them.
Just come on, girls.
Okay, I'm going to call timeout briefly. You guys are way too good at this, arguing. Okay, so what I want you to do is continue the conversation. You stay engaged.
Okay.
But I want you to begin to amplify the pattern with a little bit more amplitude and real clean consistency, right? And run it about every, minute or so. Each time amplifying it more until the detector here finds the first trigger in this chain.
I have to get involved in the conversation or the detect.
You can ask us questions.
Yeah, you can continuously
Oh,
ask
absolutely.
questions.
You can talk about anything
But
you want.
they are not referring it to me. They are just fighting among themselves.
Right, well,
they have not come.
Maybe ask
You should,
different kinds of questions.
right, you should take over. This is like your parishioners. They're in here and you're having
But you see, I thought.
No, it's the ongoing conversation here, right? But again, they're going to be doing some kind of nonverbal kind of sequence, and your intention is to, let's see, if you guys can swing around a little bit here, I'm just going to signal in the back of the room, okay? Ready? And you want to find the first one that fires off this little chain. So you guys carry on.
Hi, girls. How are you doing this morning?
Terrible.
As always.
Yeah.
So,
It's always like this.
What is this always like that?
It's just, we're always bickering like this. It's so annoying.
They're stealing my T-shirts.
you do it too.
So there is some problem.
Yeah, there's a problem.
What can be the specific problem among you all?
They're jealous that I have a boyfriend.
Jealousy.
I have a boyfriend too.
So it's a problem about boyfriend.
I'm seeing her fire off your trigger. And you're not responding. So you got to watch her. Right? It's the look. Whenever she does that, you go, so. Right? Okay.
So, and it's your problem. You.
So,
Do you live together, all three of you?
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. And what could be your, what do you like to have?
so,
We want to have separate rooms.
Yeah.
And that the separate rooms will help your problems.
I don't know.
Jealousy among you all.
Is they jealous I have a boyfriend? I mean,
You're
no.
not.
And you don't have a boyfriend?
No.
And why you are jealous about having a boyfriend?
Because she talks about it all the time.
Okay, does that bother you all very much?
she brags about her kid, the boyfriend.
You've got to watch it. And the so has got to be very consistent. Right? So you want to amplify up your signal just a bit so you can detect it. Right? And whenever you see that one, whatever's happening, you go so. Because you're picking up on it, but he needs to hear the so consistently.
So I have to say so all the time.
Yeah, because
When
otherwise I
she
don't.
does that.
Okay.
Because if you don't say so, Adrian doesn't roll her eyes.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, back from the restroom.
So you're back today.
Again.
Yeah, we're back. Things have not improved.
So you want to have more improvement in your life?
Mm-hmm.
And what is that stops you all from improving?
I don't really know. I just think we've never been able to get along from birth. You know.
So you want to have a better relationship?
Mm-hmm.
No. I just want to move out.
And what will help you to be move out? So you have...
This is great. This is great. He's gotten part of it 3 times in a row, right? Unconsciously, he has no idea what he's doing. Consciously, you're doing great. You're doing great. What comes before? There it is.
Both of them. And
What kind of problem do you have with me?
So,
She's stealing my t-shirt.
she uses my toothbrush.
yeah.
All right, so let's
using the,
okay.
She's using often the so.
So,
I mean that
all right.
is to.
Great.
According
Now,
to
do you
that
think
one.
that's the first trigger in the chain?
Yeah, it is when she says so that it brings a commotion among them. Yeah.
Okay. Now, what kind of commotion?
Yeah, I mean it is
That's what you need.
Difference. Yeah.
All right. So what you want to discover now is that you've got a piece of it. So I, give you a little hint here.
Mm-hmm.
However, Matsura is not the first in the chain. Something is firing off the so, and it's always there right before the so.
Yeah.
Right. And right after the
That
so.
is the eye contact of the her eye contact.
Excellent. Excellent. So you got the first 2.
Yeah.
Then what does Adrian do in response to the so? Because Adrian is responding to that so.
That I did not.
All right, a little bit more. Let's see if you can, you've got the first couple of pieces. See if you can identify the final one. So carry on.
Okay. So you have a problem, you said.
I don't have problem. They do
No.
have
She
problem.
really has a problem
No,
because I
you
use
want
her
to move out, you
toothbrush.
said, and you want to be independent yourself.
Yeah.
So,
So
Demonstrate it. Demonstrate it. Don't say it. What does she do? Demonstrate it. Show me. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. I would say that's successful. Way to go.
Well, she often is to do that, but
Actually, but it's different.
Yeah.
Not this, but
Yeah.
it's part of it. I hadn't really,
Yeah.
That was there pretty consistently. It was the eye roll
Yeah,
specifically.
Yeah.
Right? Now this is interesting because unconsciously he picked up on the so very early on. Very early on.
Yeah, because
And
she
then
was using from the beginning.
Right.
Yes, yeah.
Way before he knew consciously. Right? He was using the word so pretty consistently. Then it kind of popped to his conscious awareness. Right? So he had that piece of it. Right? And he had then backtracked. He got the piece that was firing her off.
Yeah.
Right? Now, with this group, when you're doing this in your exercises, this group needs to be very consistent. Otherwise, the pattern is going to get absorbed by all the other stuff going on. So you need to very consistently do exactly the same behavior, right? Because what's going to happen, literally, it's kind of an unconscious awareness that's happening over here, because his conscious mind is engaged in whatever the discussion is about. And yet this perceptor body, looking for pattern, right? Pattern detector, is going to sort through this until, wow, that's real obvious. And at that point, the task of the person in Israel's position is to fire off the first sequence. Israel, the second component in the sequence was the most obvious to him. So if that's the case for you, you want to keep going until you see if there's something consistent that fires that off, until you're really pretty confident you've got the first trigger. And then you fire that off to get the response here and over there. All right, question.
You see, before you guys ask
Sure.
questions, what I was doing is because of the topic is about sensory this thing.
Right.
So I was mostly concentrating on the eye contact
Yeah.
and the movements of the eyes.
Right.
Of course, and that is one thing I was trying to figure out. Of course, and then I know the problem was with her, like mostly the center,
Right.
and I was trying to focus on the verbs and words, and then her eye movements and those things.
Exactly.
So
So-
going down or these
Right.
things. Yeah.
And this is really good
That's what I
feedback,
was
because
saying.
what happens if you've got sort of a preconceived thing that you're looking for and the signal is somewhere else, right? Or you're focused in on just facial expressions and it's something like this, you may miss it. So you want to have kind of a full peripheral vision of the whole thing, like it's a single organism, right? And have your awareness fully there. And then engage the conversation, just because this is a stretch for you. It's a stretch to do two things at once. Engage in a conscious conversation, naturalistically, and at the same time, you have another part of your awareness looking for pattern. All right?
He just mentioned that he was looking, it sounds, focusing visually, but subconsciously he picked up the auditory signal.
As Grinder says, the unconscious mind is mercilessly quick. Right?
Is it, my question is, his internal mapping system,
Right.
is it primarily auditory?
There's-
Circumstances or just...
Right. It could be circumstances. It could be just this situation. It could be that auditory trigger popped out of the background a little bit with more intensity, right? It could be a combination of things. But there's a couple of points to this. One is it's a behavioral task for you guys to be consistent in a sequence while you maintain verbal communication. So it's a multi-perceptual position stretch for these two, right? Because they're doing, or these three, because they're doing a couple of things at once. For this person, it's a stretch of awareness in pattern detection and conscious connection, right? And the task of this is, again, to repeat this repetitive pattern and continue to amplify it systematically until it comes to conscious awareness in this person, right? All right. Thank you very much for your demonstration. You did quite well, ladies.
How is it going to help?
Have a seat, and then we'll... Okay. Masudi, you had a question.
Yeah, how is it going to help for him to notice our sensory?
Well, let me tell you a little story about, again, it's a John Grinder story. Story goes that when he would do high-flight business consultation, he would go into a business, and the business would be falling apart for various reasons or whatever. He would get the interested parties gathered around the boardroom, right? And they would be sitting there, so there might be the CEO, right, the guy in charge of research and development, a couple middle managers, everyone that ran the company. And a company is like a family, it's a system. And somewhere this system really wasn't working well, right? So John would gather them all and say, okay, I'd like you to at your own rate, in your own way. Simply express to me what you think is going on in the company and where the problems are. And then John would kind of go into a light trance state, right? Just observing. And he was listening sort of to the content, but mostly he was finding out who fired off who. Because it wasn't always the CEO or the boss that, the boss would make a gesture. And sometimes he would notice that the accountant, the guy in charge of finances, would be tapping his pencil. And whenever that happened, right, the manager in charge of, development or whatever would have this, kind of response, and the CEO would go, oh. So he got a sense of the flow, the unconscious flow of communication, a sense who was in charge, right? Who was kind of controlling it. In this case, the analogy is there was one sister that had some behavior that fired off this one and fired off this one. So there's a system going there. And when you detect that, then you can utilize that pattern in a group, right? That's a practical application of this. One of the more fundamental applications of this is to stretch your perceptual filters, your thresholds of perception, so that what is happening in the world, in your awareness, is no longer random. You begin to see pattern everywhere. NLP is about detecting patterns, patterns that work, patterns that don't work. But without the ability to detect patterns, you don't know whether they work or don't work. You simply don't see them or hear them. All right. Now, do we have enough demonstration, an idea of the structure of this to rock and roll? All right? It's going to be groups of 4, and let's see, we're going to keep it to a 10-minute period. All right? So 10 minutes. With practice, it'll kind of streamline itself. The first time might be a little klutzy, just getting everything wired together. So there's going to be groups of 4, and the pattern detector, the one in Israel's position, will set the context. So you'll say, okay, it's going to be, I'm a teacher, it's a classroom thing, and I've got 3 students that are acting out in class. Whatever is useful for them. They set the context, and then they take a hike. They go outside where they can't see the rehearsal. Then these other 3 rehearse a sequence of anchored responses. One person fires it off, the next person does something else, the next person does something else. And it's very consistent, right? This could be either auditory or some kind of visual thing, right? A body posture, something that's just really significant that they can amplify. And they practice that until they've really got the pattern down for a minute or so. Then they bring the partner back in, they roll this naturalistic conversation, or as natural as it can, and the person in Israel's position is to continue the conversation while they're sorting for the pattern. And what they want to be able to find is who fires it first. What is it? What is the response in the next person and in the third person? And then, rather than saying, okay, you're moving your eyes and she's coughing, they want to steal the first person's anchor. Right? In this case, if Israel had identified, Maya's the look, he would have looked at Masuda and given her the look. At which case, since that fires it off, she has to go, so, right? That's the task. And these folks start off low amplitude and slowly increase it until this pattern pops out. All right, so it comes to conscious awareness. All right, so it's going to be 10 minutes per person. Find yourself 3 partners and the place to be, and let's do it. Ladies and gentlemen, let's do this. Let's take a 10-minute break. 10-minute break, then we're back in the whole group. Finish up if you want to. 10 minutes back here. So what exactly were you doing in this last exercise? What is it like to have split attention? Normally in conversations, is it not the case that you basically kind of go unconscious? You're talking to somebody, right? Yeah. It's the seduction of the content and what's there. Right? This was a challenge because you had to have a certain split attention, or some aspect of consciousness that had to be aware while the output continued. I can tell I'm not the first one that's ever had to check their mic. You have a sign for it, don't you? Are you, that must be better. So, how are you doing it? What were you doing inside? Yeah.
I was thinking, well, visual clues. I completely neglected the auditory.
The auditory.
We decided to do auditory.
Challenge.
That's the sweet spot.
I don't see nothing.
I mean, she's saying yes, and she's going like this, and I'm going, oh, God, that's got my body language.
But that was
Right.
deliberate, because I normally talk with my hands,
Right.
so my cue was wow, but every time I open my mouth, I say wow.
Interesting. So she kind of got it because it was late. Right. This is how Cheryl says, wow. Yes.
My clue or cue was interesting.
Uh-huh.
That was what it was.
Interesting.
And she would try to associate it with some sort of movement I made.
Mm-hmm.
You know, which I did a different one every time. I
Right.
moved my arms every time.
Judy's over there going, why I oughta? I thought I had it. Yeah. Absolutely. It is feedback. Yeah. I mean, once you become aware that you are aware in all systems, right? Then, I mean, to me it's fascinating. Sensory acuity, I think, is a fascinating thing. Because consciousness is doing something. It's an action. It's actually, something that you do in the world, like picking up a stone or a pencil. And you can become aware of visual cues and auditory cues, at the same time maintaining a kind of conscious connection with someone at the level of verbal communication. And periodically, strange little visual cues are fired off that you don't quite understand, and that's okay. Yes?
Well, I just found it hard to concentrate and carry conversation as the observer.
Right.
You're trying to assimilate this stuff and look and try to, have a reasonably intelligent conversation. So
Right.
It's hard.
Right.
At first.
And this, I think, is because whatever awareness or consciousness is, it characteristically moves to this verbal level, and this kind of interchange, words, is comfortable there. We've practiced that a lot. But for it to suddenly become aware that there's other things going on, right? You're in two places at once. So hopefully you're beginning to get this sense and sensory acuity that it is like a split attention, a split awareness. And your consciousness has the capacity to do this.
For me, it was easier, because I was like a third person, so it got easier as we went along.
Right.
It was also easier to shake hands like in a business setting, and then just let them tell their story and
Right.
sort of sit back and then just watch. Instead of engaging and trying to talk, because that's going to do different things.
Right. Well, let me complete this little story about John Grinder. You remember I was saying at the boardroom, he'd say, all right, tell me what's going on in the company. I'll be a fly on the wall here. I'm not going to volunteer anything. I'm just going to observe, right? And basically, he'd tune out the content. He wasn't listening to the content. He was looking at the nonverbals until he got the sequence of patterns. And after, 20 minutes or 15, whatever it took, he would come back and say, okay, great. I think I have some awareness of what your situation is, but I'd like us to recapitulate this. So I'd like you to repeat exactly what you just said, right? So just to make sure that we're all at the same level of understanding. And then he would start rolling in with the content and responding, but he's firing off these triggers. So you think that the CEO, tap, 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 this guy fires off, right? Anchor stayed over here, and he's just doing a dance. But he did a process of information gathering non-verbally first, right? And then integrated it with the content. Yeah, cool.
And you're saying he integrated with the content
Uh-huh.
and mimicked all of the behavior?
He utilized what he had discovered non-verbally, right? Yeah.
So is he then taking the power away from the actual the instigator and then kind of taking that role and kind of playing with a...
Well, rather than saying taking the power away from it, I would...
or like diffusing
Yeah.
the situation.
Yeah. Again, it's going to depend on outcome. I think the easiest way for us to understand it is that he was utilizing established anchors, right, in a more fruitful way, breaking up, patterns that were unresourceful, installing patterns that were more resourceful, that kind of thing. All right, sensory acuity. We're going to. I want you to review in your mind our first exploration of representational systems. Right? And one of the primary ways we have of detecting representational systems is words, right? I see by the look in your face that You know, you're really looking forward to tomorrow. You hear verbal words that express a certain rep system. Or it feels to me as if the burden of my future is like a heavy weight on my shoulders. You hear these words, and then you have a sense that this person, what's most in their awareness is a visual representation or some feeling, or it might be an auditory, because they're tuning in to the sound of the crystalline tone of the little river as it sings its song. That's all auditory. And this is where their awareness is. So in our first little rounds of rapport, we began to detect these and then utilize those as a way of meeting somebody at their map of the world. Right? Good. All right. Let's go a little bit deeper into representational systems, because something really remarkable occurred in the early days of NLP when the developers, who were exquisite pattern detectors, this is John and Richard, and then Robert Dilts, Judith Delosier, Leslie Cameron Bandler, these early developers of NLP were exquisite pattern detectors. And they noticed something that had been around for thousands of years, and no one had noticed it as a consistent pattern. And we're going to explore that very thing now with the four of you, beginning with Dana. If the four of you could just stand between these two blue lines somewhere, right here, we're going to watch you think. So this is not, you don't have to say a word. Let's see, Ellen, if you could come over here a bit, get you guys between the marks. Here's what I'm doing. I'm just going to ask some questions. You guys answer them internally. You don't speak out loud, but just come up with the answer, right? Your task is to detect a pattern, right? And primarily, we want to focus our awareness on the face, and specifically on the eyes. We're looking for a consistent pattern linked to the kinds of questions that I ask. So, I will begin. You guys just relax and answer these questions internally when I ask you, what color is your car? All right. What color is the upholstery in your car? All right. On a stoplight, where's red? Top or bottom? Okay. On a rainbow, right? See, just imagine a rainbow. Got a real vivid rainbow. You got it? All right. Where is the violet? Ooh, that's a good one, huh? What do we got? Everybody take their hand and point to what's going on with their eyes. Where are they looking? Rainbow. Rainbow. Go to the rainbow. Where's the purple? Bing, bing. Just a little bit. Rainbow? You got a purple?
I didn't know where purple was.
Where purple was. So you gave up, right? So purple, I don't know, right? I gave up. Oh, see? You see it? You see it? You see it?
Yeah.
Boom.
Yeah.
Right? Now, this was nice because it was stabilized. We got a really good look at it. Often these movements of the eyes are relatively quick to kind of move and then access the answer. Right? So you want to look for consistent pattern. What color are your mother's eyes? Okay. Now you have a sense of what color your mother's eyes are, right? Now, no two eyes are exactly the same color. Which one is the most intense of your mother's eyes? Interesting. So we got a consistent pattern, and then we have Ken. Now, do you hear what he said? If you gather more information, it makes sense. He was saying he was trying to imagine what she looked like and looking directly at her. Right? Okay, great. Let's play. So primarily, we're kind of getting some stuff that's coming up over in this direction, definitely up. Right? Yeah, sort of back and forth kind of thing. Let's play with some imaginary creatures. I want you to imagine. Thank you, Chris. Went to the imaginary creature category. See, that's over here. What's in there? Okay, everybody, access their imaginary creature category. We're going to look for. We're going to look for a purple lion. boy! Wow! So everybody went where? Boing! Oh, interesting. That's where the purple lions are. Now, take that purple lion, look closely at it, and allow some big green wings to grow on it. Big green wings. Now let it be on a skateboard. Whoa, the skateboard is blue. Got it all together? Green wings, blue, purple lion.
I've got one of those.
Blue. Yeah, cool. That's a nice stable hit there. So, what types of questions am I asking? Imaginary. They're visual for sure. You know, I'm asking them to see, but I'm asking them to see something they've never seen before. So I'm asking them to construct some kind of visual image. Let's go back to some remembered images. I'd like to ask you, yeah, okay, wherever you, go into the little box of remembered pictures. And now I want to ask you what color is your house or your apartment? Oh, very nice. You guys are good. You think quite well. Very consistent. So what did we have there? Is a pretty stable pattern.
Yeah. No, all right, they're left.
They went up over this, more over in this direction?
Visual.
Right. All right. Try a couple more visual remembered things. What color was your first car? There it is again. Dana was bouncing around a little bit, but kind of got her up there. Or let's try some other representational systems. What's it feel like when you really settle into a nice, warm bath? Just let yourself feel that in your whole body. All right? Okay, now interesting. We've got a little bit of a split. We've got Ken and Ellen. What are they doing?
Ken was imagining himself.
Right. We've kind of got they're kind of moving down here. Dana's a little bit different, and so is Chris here. So, Dana, what were you doing inside? Yeah.
I thought I was feeling what it felt like.
Okay. Great. Well, feel that again. Just feel that all over you. Okay. All right. Now, what happens if the water turned cold real quick? There it is. Woo! Burn! All right. So it's wintertime. You're walking down the street, right? And you're just enjoying the crisp, cool air. You're nice and warm in your jacket. Just feel your body walking, and then somebody shoves a snowball down your back. What's that feel like? All the way down the back. All right. So we had a little bit of multiple access and a couple of these hits down to the lower to the right. All right. I want you to imagine petting a kitten and the feel of that. Nice, Chris. Nice, Ken. All right. And now, have you ever felt on a cat, if you rub gently under the neck when it's purring, feel that vibration in your hand? All right. Just get a good feel for that. Okay, it's interesting. What color is the cat that you were? Is there curiosity, Dana?
Gray.
Gray, yeah. Now, why did I suspect that she might have a color? Though I was asking for feeling, because of where her eyes were going. They were going up again, and then she got these little quick bursts down and to the right.
You know, it was visual remembered, it wasn't constructed, so she was remembering what she had constructed.
All right. That could very well be. All right. All right, so we have a sense that the kinesthetic kind of comes down in this direction when you ask specific kinesthetic questions. When you ask constructed imagery questions, it's kind of up in that direction for them, and remembered imagery is up over here. These are the patterns we're detecting. All right? Let's try some auditory. What I'd like you to do is hear your best friend reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. Listen to their voice carefully, and listen, really attend to the tone of their voice. All right? All right, now hear Mickey Mouse do the same thing. All right, now turn up the volume a little bit and hear Mickey and Minnie doing it together. All right, what are you picking up on?
Chris's eyes were level.
He went level and slightly off to the right, right? How about Dana and Ellen? Okay. All right. I want you to imagine hearing your own voice recite Pledge of Allegiance. All right. Now, what did Ellen just do?
Yeah, she listened to it.
All right. Right before that, where did her eyes go? All right. This way and down a little bit. Okay. Everybody has periodically some critical self-dialogue, right? Just hear yourself, whatever that is. Where'd Ellen go? Boom, boom. Look at Chris. There's Ken. Everybody's... Turn up the volume a little bit there, Dana. That critical dialogue. All right? Now start saying something really nice about yourself and listen to that. All right. Chris is over there. Do you feel good about what you were saying, Chris? Kind of thought you might. All right. This is not quite as clean, right? Not quite as consistent. All right. Imagine hearing one of the candidates, the presidential candidates, giving a speech. Hear their voice. Hear their voice. Right? I want you to pay particular attention to the voice quality. All right. So Ken and Ellen, pretty well stabilized where? Kind of down over here, right? Down slightly to the left. Dana's up here. Okay. All right, let's go with the political candidate again, right? And this time, I want you to imagine that they're reading a menu at a Mexican restaurant. So pick either Carrie or Bush, and they're reading the menu to you. Whoa, got a lot of visual accessing on that, right? So, Chris, what were you doing inside?
I couldn't quite picture it at first.
Yeah, right. Well, so I asked him an auditory question, and he needed to picture it. So, you got an image of it. Dana, you were doing something similar, is that right? Yeah.
I think so. Yeah, it kept fading. I was having a hard time getting the voice or the picture, and then it was fading in and out. So I had to.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Ken?
I was thinking of a person speaking in Spanish.
There. You see it? As he says, speaking in Spanish, eyes drop down to the right, and then they come or left, and they come back up. And Ellen, when you were...
I was trying to find...
Which, right. Okay. So, the thing is, once you begin to detect these patterns, even if it doesn't seem to be consistent with what we're anticipating, if you gather more information, then it makes perfect sense. All right? Okay, I think that's sufficient for our pattern detection to link to what we're going to be doing next. Thank you so much for letting us see you think. I'd like us to look on our in our handouts, or you can look up here. Boink. And this is on page number 3 in your handout book there. The famous NLP happy face diagram, the accessing cue diagram. This is a schematic of the pattern of what we call eye-accessing cues that are indicators of representational systems, right? And as we noticed in just this group here, in a brief period of time, when a person is accessing visual information, their eyes go up. But there's finer distinctions than that. That visual, this is as if you're looking at my face, right? If I'm to access my mother's eyes and, remember her at a picnic when I was 9 years old, my eyes are going to tend to, when I'm accessing visually remembered information, go in this quadrant. If I'm thinking about that purple lion over there on the skateboard, this is where the visual constructed images go. Kinesthetics or feeling, right? Feeling the neck of the cat as it purrs and just getting that really in my fingers, or the hot tub turning cold, access tends to be down to the right, the eyes. And auditory, particularly actually your notes, there are a couple of typos, I believe. The little A down here, should have a D above it. Should say AD. And this D stands for digital. This is words, right? Spoken words.
And it says here sounds.
Say again?
Sounds.
Right, and actually I think that sounds let me see yours, did it get moved over in the... Yeah. Words is under the kinesthetic, it should slide over under the auditory, just sort of make an arrow, it's a typo. Yes.
I'm finding myself kind of switching myself, kind
Whoa.
of second person to the little figure.
Yeah.
So my question is, like the visual constructs, they're trying to say it's out here, right? Because when I switch myself to the figure,
Yeah, right.
there.
That'll just confuse the heck out of you. Here's how to remember this diagram. Use either this or what's in your notebook. And what I'd like you to do is gaze at it and memorize it with your eyes open, right? I want you to just absorb that image. And these, let me just be real clear. We didn't explore these too much. We don't use them a great deal in NLP techniques and in pacing and leading. But these are also there. Often a horizontal gaze to the eyes, left and right. It's an auditory access, but these are sounds, right? This would be like hearing the song of a robin. This would be like hearing a babbling brook, right? This might be like hearing an orchestra. So these are auditory sounds, not words, not the spoken word. It's often in this direction. Yes?
And is this primarily for right-handed
The
individuals?
lateralization, right and left hands, seems to make no difference. The one difference that we've kind of detected over time, for whatever reason, a couple of them. One is that the Basque people of northern Spain have no preference visually. They're totally flexible up here.
They don't like the yellow jersey being on Lance Armstrong.
Say again?
They said they didn't like the yellow jersey being on
Right,
Lance
yeah,
Armstrong.
right, yeah. Yeah, exactly, right. A little. So does that make sense? I mean, that's just one little weird thing. Now, another thing that's been observed over time is that and I'm guessing there's probably 2 or 3 people in this room that will discover this, about maybe 15%, 12 to 15% of people are reversed on top. In other words, they go over here for construct and over here for remember. Right? About 15%. Bobby, my wife, is reversed consistently. I think in 20-some years, I have met one person that is reversed here. This is really unusual for these two to be reversed. Right? Those are almost always stable in this way.
Is there any gender?
No gender difference, no handedness, no cultural difference. Indians in Peru at 17,000 feet. I've checked it out myself. Right? Culture is everyone that I've been in. Consistent. Across the board. It's a human neurological function. Right? Now, here's where we're going with this. This is a claim. We've had some experience of it up here, watching it with some degree of consistency. In a moment, we're going to get together with groups of 4 or 5, and you're going to discover this for yourself. Because this is something that you need to prove out with your own observations. Right? So first you need the strategy. First step of the strategy is to gaze at that until you feel as if you've memorized what it looks like. Right? Particularly these major quadrants, VC, VR, AD, and K. There's auditory here too, but those are the primary ones. Then, once you know that you've got it visually with your eyes open, I want you to close your eyes and see it. So you can imagine it clearly with your eyes closed. And if you kind of lose the image, open your eyes and recharge it. All right? Do you have a sense that you can see that image and those letters with your eyes closed for 10 or 15 seconds, and it stabilizes? All right? And then when you have that, I want you to look at it again, sort of charge your visual receptors, and superimpose it on my head. Right? So just overlay it on my head. So up here, what do you see? VR. What do you see up here? BC. What do you see down here? What do you see down here? Exactly. So
VR, BC, K, AD, VR, K, AD, BC.
Excellent. Right? And this is simply, this happens very quickly. You memorize this. Right? Yes, Maya?
If we have only one kinesthetic spot, does it mean that we don't have kinesthetic memory or kinesthetic imagination?
No. It doesn't. No. No, this is just a seems to be a neurological link that when your brain is operating and you're making internal pictures, there are certain areas of the brain, visual cortex, that is firing very activated, the level of the axons and dendrites and the neurons. And there is a link to the optic centers of the muscles of the eye. The eye is actually an extension of the brain. I mean, it's just like, the pupil, et cetera, is linked directly. And this just seems to be an artifact of who we are as human beings. It's just a pattern that all humans manifest. When they're accessing a remembered image, the eyes go up here. When they're creating something, it goes up over here. When they have a feeling, it goes down here. Now, as you'll discover in this little sensory acuity exercise we're going to do in a moment, often these happen very quickly. If you say to someone, what color your mother's eyes, that might be all you get. You see it? Boom. They went up, got the answer, and boom. Very seldom do you say, what color your mother's eyes, and people go, right? But if you make it a challenging question, like what color is at the top of a rainbow, it'll slow down a bit. So if you're not seeing the pattern as clearly as you'd like, be more and more demanding in the access, right? Question?
Can it wander and then end up?
Sure. We saw some evidence of that. I'd say something like, hear a presidential candidate reading a Mexican, menu, and you'd see him go, First of all, they'd get a visual, even though it was an auditory question, right? They'd get a visual, the restaurant, and maybe get the presidential candidate, do a little accessing up here, and then quick little access down here where they'd hear it. Right? Yeah.
So if you ask them what they had for breakfast and they had cereal and they said pancakes and they're constructing it, you might be able to tell that they're fibbing to you.
Well, this is an interesting thing. It's been on a couple of movies, I forget which, where, the CSI guy says, well, I watched him and his eyes went up over here. That means he's lying. Right? Yeah, okay. Yeah, exactly, the negotiator. It was in there specifically. But think about this. I'd like you to, like the new behavior generator, I want you to see yourself in a pleasant experience that you remember. Right? And just see yourself over there having a good time. Get a real clear image of it. Notice what you're wearing. Right? Now I'm looking around the room here, and about 2/3 of you are doing visual construct. Right? Some of you are doing visual remembered. Now, visual remembered is first position. That's how you saw it or see it out of your own eyes. If you're seeing yourself dissociated, what kind of image is it? It's constructed. So if the policeman says, where were you on the night of August 32nd, and you're seeing yourself be at the dance, you're telling the truth, even though it's a constructed image. So there's no link between truth-telling and lying in terms of this. It just gives you an indication of what's going on. Yeah.
What if your vision goes towards the center?
Well, again, what you'll generally find, and we'll do this briefly in just a moment in an exercise where you can explore with each other, often what you'll see is a very quick access to get the information, right? And it was Ken, I think, was doing this a moment ago, asking color of mother's eyes, and I actually didn't even notice a quick one up here, but he seemed to be gazing out here. This is where he was literally seeing a representation of mother, right? And sometimes people do that, particularly if it's a visual thing. They'll go up and get a quick little hit, a quick little access. It'll happen just unconsciously, spontaneously, and then they'll bring it up out here. So the eye gaze will go directly out here. What we need, this is why sensory acuity is so important, because sometimes these things happen very rapidly, right? Yeah.
It's not just in one system, too. I mean, if you say, a minute ago when you said, what's the sound of a babbling brook?
Right.
Immediately I got the picture.
Sure.
I mean, I'm not going to have the sound of it without
Exactly.
seeing anything.
Exactly. Yeah. Right. But let's try this. Blair, if you'd stand up right where you are. Do you like music?
Yeah.
What kind of music?
Like old stuff.
Okay. So what kind of old stuff? What kind of instruments?
Electric guitar.
All right. So listen to, who's a good guitarist?
Pete Townsend.
All right. Yeah. Did you see him get it? So you got a picture of Pete Townsend. Listen to the way Pete plays the guitar. I mean, just tune into that, man. Right? Hear the fuzz and fuzz bass. And, right? Now, who else could... Yeah. All right. Now, what was that? What the heck was that? First of all, which side of the body was it on? It was on the right-hand side. He kind of swung down here, right? So, it's sometimes gestures follow, right? All right, so Pete Townsend, what's another good guitarist? Keith, what color shirt was Keith Richards wearing?
Dirty.
Yeah, see? Visual remembered, boom, boom. He's got the image, knows what he looks like.
I'm not even aware of what I...
Absolutely not. Yeah, see, sometimes it's a clear image. Okay, there's Pete Townsend, he's wearing a dirty shirt. Often, it's unconscious. You're getting the image, right? So you can get the guitar sound, whatever. And it's out of your awareness. But that's what's going on internally. All right, so we got two of them, Keith Richards and...
Pete Townsend.
All right, imagine them doing a duet together. All right, and hear the guitar riffs. Right, and really tune in to the sound. There, you see it? It kind of goes up, drops down. This is very good. Right?
That was harder because that was trying to put something together that I haven't heard.
Right, exactly. So again, just for the purposes of, thank you. Just for the purposes of exploration, the more demanding the question is, the more likely you are to get the response that's consistent. Okay, I think enough talk. Let's explore this, and the way we're going to set it up, let's do groups of 3. There'll be one. Actually, let's do groups of 4. All right, they're going to be 2 people that are just responding to questions. There'll be 2 pattern detectors, and they'll take turns asking questions. Right. And you want to ask questions that demand a visual remembered response, a visual construct, some that do auditory, some that do kinesthetic, just like in the demonstration here. And when you do this, if you get something that is not consistent, in other words, you ask for what's it feel like to slide into a hot tub, and they go like that, that's not a kinesthetic response. You want to find out, ask them, well, what did you do inside? What were you aware of? To see if it does make sense. Well, I had to find out what the hot tub looked like, just to get some confirmation that there's consistency in this. So there'd be 2 people that are pattern detectors, alternating asking questions, and the other 2 folks will just answer the question, let it be naturalistic, and these 2 will share their experience of what patterns they are detecting. Maya.
What kind of question for auditory digital?
Auditory digital has to do with voice, right? So listen to some internal dialogue, or remember the last phone conversation you had with a friend. What did they say?
Auditory?
Say again?
Wouldn't be auditory?
It's possible. And if you get some sideways moves, you want to find out from them what they're doing inside. All right? So it's primarily, you could play with these 2 if you like, but these are the ones I want us to really attend to. Ricardo.
On our notebook, it says auditory digital sounds or words. What specific sounds?
So actually, that should say
just words,
spoken words or reading written words.
Okay.
Right? Okay, are we ready? Then we're going to do this for 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes. Right? So we'll alternate about 10 minutes each, asking some questions and then switch roles. Okay, find yourself 3 partners and watch the eyes. Bell. Okay, let's have a brief discussion prior to lunch here. My first question here to the entire group is, did anyone discover someone who is reversed visually?
They told me I am the...
Okay.
I don't know.
You're special.
I am special, the 50%.
Okay,
No.
so your observers saw that you consistently went the other direction. Yeah?
They told me I am the...
Okay. Who were observing, which 2 were observing them all? Yeah? Okay.
Maya also. Maya.
Great, okay.
And Berger was...
Okay, great. Anyone else that you're aware of in the group? And again, like I say, that's about right. I would have been surprised if there were any more than 2 or 3. 1 is about right. And 10% to 15% of folks, for whatever reason, seem to have the visual remembered in this quadrant, visual construct over here, rather than the way that most people. It's just a different way of processing. All right. Commentary about this? Are you noticing these consistencies? Michelle, I see that hand going up.
lots of dumb questions, but
Oh, good.
This has actually been cut off. It just like the D up here.
Yeah.
It says auditory digital.
Yeah, that should
sounds
slide over
or-
there.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Typo. All right. Yes.
I found that when you asked them a question, it didn't seem that things were moving, and then interjected something else, like a sound into a visual. Then,
Right.
bam,
Bing.
when they weren't expecting.
Yeah, and often it is when you, yeah, I mean, you're working with people who are aware of what you're doing, right? So that makes it doubly difficult. So if you kind of surprise them, you get that access. I mean, how many of you notice that sometimes these accesses are pretty quick, right? And they don't necessarily stabilize, but they're there. Boom, they show up and then, right? Cool. Other observations about this? Yes.
When you asked for a chronological, what was your first kiss or something? I mean, the access cues to go there and
Right.
just, you know,
Right.
remember it. Well, they go to construct almost, you know, kind of, okay. It was pretty.
Right. So, and often when you'd ask them like a complex visual like that, they'll be doing some like comparison or sorting, right? I want you to tell me what, in order, your first 3 cars. You know, and then they may be up here getting one, another, and kind of constructing this whole thing in a line, right? The major point of this is, for our purposes, is that it's a window into unconscious process. And I mean, it's undeniably there. And what it reveals is what's most pertinent about this person's subjective experience. So if you're, with someone and they're talking about the problems they're having in a relationship, well, I don't know. I look at it and it just seems to me that, I can never imagine us being happy, right? You're likely to want to use what kinds of words to pace them, right? Rather than saying, God, that must feel terrible. I really hear you. Because it's just a mismatch. So these eye-accessing cues are a real direct window into a very subtle kind of rapport, that sense of connection, right? So this is something that you're going to continue to use in an ongoing way, just like the calibrations that we were doing with body, posture, et cetera, et cetera. They're a bit more subtle, and yet they're there. So what I would challenge you to do is just have your sensory awareness on eye movements for a while, and notice how they will line up with the person's process words. Right? I mean, how the consistencies are there. And we're going to do some kind of rapport drills this afternoon utilizing eye-accessing cues. The only real counterexample that I ever kind of ran across with eye-accessing cues, it wasn't really a counterexample. There was a guy, and I was training, and I had some folks up here, we were watching them think, and every question, regardless of visual, auditory, or how challenging, this guy was like this, right? I mean, there was not a glimmer. I could not get him to move. They were like this, and he was, he knew the answer to it. And finally I said, wow, what's going on? What's your background? And he said, well, I've been an interstate truck driver for 25 years. Right? And so this guy had trained himself, right, over the years. It's like your attention's out here, and you're doing all kinds of things in your brain, but, right? So it made perfect sense once you figure it out. All right, I think we're about ready to break for lunch. Are there any logistical announcements from our... No? All righty. One thing I'd like to say is that for this little one-day Sunday shaman thing I'm doing, there's a flyer over in this table if you want to read a little bit about that. I put out some pretty pictures of the folks in Peru and some Hawaii things if you want to check those out. Otherwise, we will see you back here at 1:30.